Welcome to the Q&A with the Noble 24th. This time we're going to do something a little bit different. We've heard a lot of opinions of the enlisted men, and now we're going to get some from a commissioned officer with Adjutant Thelen coming to us here. Thank you for being here and doing this with us.
Yeah, thank you, Grant.
Okay, so we're going to get right into the questions. Out of all of the hobbies that you do, what is it about reenacting that drew you to it?
Well, I think I've always been into the history of the time period. I was doing a lot of research about the American Revolution and the battles and the characters involved well before I got into reenacting.
Okay, and now kind of elaborate on that a little bit. What is it about the American Revolution, this late 18th century colonial America, that really draws you into wanting to portray an officer of the line for the British who was here?
Well, I think you get an understanding of history and how the battles and like that work that in a way you never would from reading a book. You know, anytime you can just experience something firsthand is a lot more valuable than reading about it. So and the time period, I just like the idea that it was like a smaller world. It seemed that a lot of these characters all have interactions with each other, these historical figures, and it's because there's just not as many people as there are today. And so I think it's a smaller world and you have a better chance and a better opportunity to make something of yourself back then. So I just find that interesting that our country is so big now, it's hard to imagine it. And it's 100 times the population of what it was in the 13 colonies when the war began.
And now, do you consider reenacting, do you consider it like a hobby, or do you kind of consider it like a lifestyle?
Well, see, I'm not. There's certainly a lot of people that consider it a lifestyle. I don't reenact enough. If you'd talked to me 20 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, I would say it's more of a lifestyle because I came into the hobby right around the 225th anniversary of the Revolutionary War, and I was in a unit with a bunch of really young guys, and it was the social aspect. Today in my life, reenacting isn't the social aspect. I don't really hang out with the people I reenact with, even though I have great affection for them, love for them. I don't really hang with them outside of reenacting. So it's really intense, like 48-hour periods, a couple times a summer to hang out with people. And then I go back to my normal 21st century life. And we talk online and that kind of stuff, but it's not the same. And some people it's their entire everything. It's not just the weekends, and there's people doing way more weekends than I even consider doing. But it's because it's their life, and it's just not for me in the same way. But I'm getting older too, so.
And now, what is it about the 24th that keeps you around?
Well, the 24th, it's very professional unit. It's my second unit, and I was very fortunate to be in the 20th Foot and rose up in the ranks in the 20th Foot and had a great experience. But the unit faded over time. We lost a lot of reenactors. The hobby, when gas prices went to $4, and I don't know that was around 2008 or when that was, 2010 maybe, and gas prices went up to $4, and people just said, well, that's the hobby's expensive enough, and I can't also then pay. I mean, you have people going 8 hours to an event, so you can't, it's a lot of gas and a lot of time, and I think people just say it's easier to do other things. So I was fortunate enough to hook up with the 24th, and that there was a spot for me, and I'm very, very grateful. I get to keep doing what I love doing. I'm a staff officer, and so I love doing that. It's something that people don't want to do in the hobby, but I want to do. I find it very fascinating being a staff officer, and it gives me a seat at the table. And so it's given me some really cool opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten, in maybe even in other units. But the 24th, it's especially for Northern New York, there's not really another British unit this far north, as far as I know, unless it's maybe a militia unit. And so it's the professionalism of the British Army and the 24th in general. It's you know, all of the accoutrements that they carry and all their kit that they wear. It's all very well done.
And now, what would you say is the best thing about reenacting for you?
Well, the people, again, the immersion that you can get every once in a while to maybe at least, I don't know how far we actually experience what the 18th century is, maybe it's only 2% of what they actually felt. But there's been some times where you're immersed and you get that feeling like you're a couple hundred years ago and not in the 21st century. So, but the people for sure. I mean, my gosh, hasn't since the beginning of man, we've just sat around fires and talked and told stories and joked and laughed, and that's really what keeps me coming back, is to the people. And because reenactments, it can get pretty repetitive. You go to the same sites every year, and some sites only want you to do a certain battle scenario, and so it's kind of like you're just literally running through the motions. And so it's the time outside of those battles that are really special to get to hang out with great people.
Now, would you consider that sort of that repetition, that going to the same sites, doing the same scenarios, would you consider that kind of like the worst aspect of reenacting, or is there something else on top of that that you consider?
No, the heat is probably the worst. It's like either too hot or too wet at an event. It's like don't complain about the heat, because it'll start raining, it seems like, and then it really gets miserable, because at least the heat you can lay down and stretch out, but if it starts raining, everybody huddles in to try to stay dry, and then now you've got a bunch of people that potentially it could be second, third day of an event, and everybody smells like gunpowder and sweat and everything, and wet wool now. So it's a lot of times it's the weather, because the sites, oh my gosh, especially if you go to like Fort Crown Point, just one of the most beautiful sites, and to go to like Fort Oswego, or some of these places, Fort Ticonderoga, that has now been reconstructed. Even Hubbardton, the fact that it's really just a mowed field in a way, but it's where our history happened. It's pretty fascinating to be at these sites. But if you go to Lake George, well, it's kind of hard to have a really cool site in Lake George, because it's you can't get out away from the public. So,
But now, we've talked about the good. Now you've talked about the bad. But what's like the middle ground? What's like the pet peeve? Like, it doesn't really bother you. It's not really like a deal breaker. It's just like you see it and you're just like, ew.
Well, one of the reasons I'm a staff officer is I just didn't like being in line. It's we fire more times in a battle than they ever thought of firing. I often think we have more combat experience than anybody in the 18th century, because we've fought so many quote unquote battles. We would think about differently if we actually took casualties, but as far as I know, I'm immortal, at least in the 18th century sense. So, it's the little things like rolling cartridges, getting ready for an event, polishing your stuff, getting ready for an event. It's all the it's all the stuff that you're, I guess, the military would call the hurry up and wait kind of things. Where you're told, oh, we got to get ready to move out in an hour, and then it's like, okay, or in 10 minutes, and then it'll be like, oh, all right, everybody gets ready, and then everybody's all kitted up and whatnot, and then we don't do anything for an hour, except stand in the sun. So it's those kind of things that but listen, it happens. That's why, as an officer now, I try to be a lot more mindful of those kind of things, Don't make guys do anything that you wouldn't ask them to do yourself. Because I've been asked, quote unquote, ordered / asked to do things on a battlefield that, just leaves you mentally exhausted, which, mentally and physically exhausted, because it just gets so hot sometimes on the battlefield, and you're keep pouring gunpowder down a hot barrel on a musket. It can really wear on you.
Now we do eat well as a unit,
Oh,
as we've done
yeah.
many times, but I do
Oh,
need to
yeah.
ask, what is your favorite meal?
Yeah, I don't know if a favorite meal. I think just being fed is the best. That I always say, my favorite food, just in general, is anything I don't have to cook myself. So, it's nice to know that you have people that are filling their roles, and yeah, you may ask me to go get firewood, which I'll do anytime is necessary. If there's, you'd have to go carry water, things like that. Things that I don't get asked to do anymore as an officer. But it's the officer structure in reenacting is kind of silly. If there's a dozen of us there, there's no reason for me not to do something. It just divides things up, and I don't have things to do all the time that, you guys might have to go drill, or you guys might have to go do something that I don't have to do. And so I don't mind going to get water, going to get wood. And so it's nice to know that when you get done with your job, somebody has done their job and there's food there. And it's like continually, the way it's done in the 24th, it's like, my gosh, if you see something, you better grab it, because in another 30 to 40 minutes, there's going to be something else put out there. And it's really amazing, or to ask if I want a cup of tea or something like that. That kind of stuff is really nice, to just know that there's people taking care of us.
Okay. And a last question for you. What is your advice, your seasoned reenactor advice, for someone who's just about to dip their toes in the hobby, who's just starting to get interested, looking around, doing some research? What would you tell them?
Well, okay, so this is, I've been reenacting for 20 years, and I only do a couple events a year, but I am in a unit with the French and Indian War. So, but still, I only do about 2 events a year, and I did a lot more events when I first started out. It's like anything. If you would, I've got 2 kids. If you wait for the right moment, it's never the right time. Okay. So if you're going to have kids, just have kids, because you'll adapt. And in reenacting, if you're going to reenact, just join a unit. And even if it's not the unit you wind up in, it's just get started, because everybody's going to help you. If you look at it, like my dad, was Vermont State Teacher of the Year. Well, as a first-year teacher, if I look at that, I'll never be able to do anything, because I'll just be paralyzed. But when I started out reenacting in the 20th, Jim Ross, who was my dad's best friend, they taught together in Vermont. He said, if you want to reenact, you come back here tomorrow with $200. I said, okay. So what they did, I didn't even spend the $200. They had me go and buy, and someone showed me exactly what to buy. Don't go out and buy things on your own. That's a big mistake. They got me my basic small clothes, whatever I would need to reenact that day. And then they loaned me everything else. They loaned me a musket. Now it was only for that event, but for that weekend, they loaned me a musket. They loaned me a coat, because most units have extra things for these. So does the 24th. I've brought people to reenactments that have no kit at all, and pretty soon they look like a soldier. They may not. If you look real close, reenactors know that they're not kitted out properly, but the public doesn't even think about it. And so you have to know that the unit's going to be there to support you as you acquire materials. So obviously the big expense is the musket. So once you get the musket out of the way, then every couple months, whatever it is, tax season, Christmas, start acquiring items. And even if it's something you don't need at the time, you don't want to be 6 months later and go, oh, now I need to buy 3 things, when every 2 months you could have bought 1 item. So whether it's a cartridge box or a bayonet or something like that, just make small purchases along the way, and it's a lot easier.
Okay, and it's a quick little bonus question.
Yeah.
What is your favorite color? There is a correct answer here.
Yeah, it's blue. Oh, yellow. No. You didn't ask me what my favorite event was.
Oh, well then why don't you tell me then?
Yeah, this is for the deleted scenes, so we can put this on here. So my favorite event, 225th of Saratoga, right? It was 225th, not 230th. When you've been reenacting so long, they all start to blend together. But what was the really big one? Was that 230 or 225?
225th was the big one.
225th, yeah. I mean, amazing. And knowing, I was still pretty new in the hobby, and I was I was still a private and still in the line and whatnot. But the amount of reenactors there, the fact that there was actually like 3 British armies there, or at least brigades, or however you wanted to put it, and we've all done events where there's like literally 5 people there, 5 reenactors, and I've done events where there might have been me and 1 other guy, I don't remember, but so it's not realistic. The numbers when you go to an event, it's like each person represents like 50 people, and gosh, that was the 225th of Saratoga, because it felt more real in the size of the numbers. And then number 2 would be the 250th of the attack on Quétillon, at Fort Ticonderoga, where we attacked the French lines, and it was literally like your Ranger battalion comes out, gets rests like they would have done, while another Ranger battalion goes in and assaults the works, and there's another Ranger battalion that is getting ready to go in to assault the works. So whenever there's big numbers, it's really, that's when it's thrilling, that's when it's exciting. But you only had this tunnel vision in the lines. Even it's the way they would have felt. They didn't know what was going on all over the place. So you only know what's going on right in front of you, pretty much.
Okay, well, thank you, Adjutant Thelen, for being here, doing this once again. I do want to say that, below this video in the description, as all YouTubers say, we do have contact information. We have a Facebook page, we have email, we have a website, we have many ways to reach us, many ways to ask plenty of questions, plenty of ways to get information, plenty of ways to join so we can have these big events that make it interesting. But once again, thank you, Adjutant Thelen, and we will see you in the fields.
Thanks, Grant.